Have you ever wondered if there's more to the stories of the prophets than meets the eye? Elijah and Elisha were no ordinary figures. They lived at a time when Israel was turning away from God, yet they stood as pillars of faith, performing miracles that still puzzle us today. What did they know that we don't? Their stories hold lessons that go beyond simple accounts. They carry mysteries and truths that can change how we see faith and divine power. As we uncover these hidden teachings, we might just find answers to questions we've never thought to ask. The prophets Elijah and Elisha weren't just voices in the wilderness. They were guiding lights in a time when faith in Israel was at an all-time low. With idol worship rampant, especially under King Ahab and Queen Jezebel, God sent these prophets to remind Israel of his power and love. Imagine standing against the cultural norms, facing a nation that had strayed far from its roots, and calling them back to a God they had forgotten. That's exactly what Elijah and Elisha did, serving as God's messengers to a people caught in spiritual darkness. Elijah's miracles weren't merely displays of power, they were acts of divine confrontation. When he called down fire from heaven, he wasn't just showing off. He was proving that God was real, that Yahweh was supreme over Baal and any other idol. For the people, witnessing these miracles was a moment of awakening, an undeniable sign that the God of Israel was very much alive and active. This wasn't about intimidation, but about revelation, helping the Israelites see the truth amidst the lies of idol worship. Elisha, following in Elijah's footsteps, continued to show the people the compassionate side of God. He didn't just perform miracles, he brought hope and healing. By multiplying food and raising the dead, Elisha wasn't merely impressing the crowds but revealing the heart of God, a heart that cared for even the smallest concerns of his people. Through these acts, Elisha and Elijah became symbols of God's relentless love and a reminder that, no matter how far people stray, God always provides a path back to him. When Elijah boldly confronted King Ahab with the prophecy of a severe drought, it wasn't just a warning. It was a direct challenge to Baal, the god of rain and fertility whom Israel had turned to. By declaring that rain would cease until he prayed again, Elijah demonstrated that God, not Baal, held power over nature. Imagine the tension this created. An entire kingdom in desperation, leaders watching their so-called God fail to bring relief. This was no ordinary drought. It was a divine statement that true authority rested with the God of Israel. Throughout the drought, Elijah remained a powerful symbol of faith and resilience. With no rain for years, the land grew dry, crops withered, and the people faced intense hardship. Yet Elijah's message was clear. Israel needed to turn away from idols and return to God. By standing firm in his prophecy, Elijah embodied God's determination to reach his people, to break through the illusions of idolatry and reveal the true source of life and blessing. For believers today, this moment is a reminder of the power of unwavering faith in the face of adversity. Elijah's challenge to Baal set the stage for a momentous encounter on Mount Carmel, but the drought itself was a powerful testament. It called each person to consider where they placed their trust and who they believed had ultimate control. Through Elijah's actions, God was inviting Israel to see beyond the drought, to understand that the lack of rain was not punishment but an invitation to renewal. The drought was a period of waiting and reflection, preparing the people for a revelation that would soon come with fire from heaven. During the reign of Ahab, the worship of Baal flourished in the northern kingdom of Israel, largely due to the influence of Queen Jezebel. Jezebel's zeal for Baal introduced altars, priests, and a culture that turned Israel's heart away from God. In the midst of this spiritual crisis, God raised up Elijah, a prophet who would stand alone against the tide of idolatry. Imagine the courage it took to confront a queen with such authority and a nation that had largely forgotten its own roots. Elijah's presence was a reminder that God never abandons his people, even when they stray. Elijah's faith was unshakable, serving as a beacon of hope in dark times. Through his miracles, he made it clear that Yahweh was not only present but more powerful than any false god. When Elijah performed miracles that couldn't be matched by Baal's prophets, He didn't just show Israel God's power. He exposed the emptiness of idol worship. For the people of Israel, witnessing these moments was a wake-up call, challenging them to rethink who held true authority. Elijah's life reminds believers today of the importance of staying true to faith, even when surrounded by contrary voices. This period in Israel's history serves as a timeless lesson on spiritual resilience. Despite the pressure from Jezebel and the dominance of Baal worship, Elijah's unwavering commitment illuminated the path back to God. His story invites every believer to stand firm, knowing that faith, when rooted in God, has the power to overcome any cultural or spiritual opposition. Elijah's legacy is a testament to how one person, guided by God, can change the course of an entire nation, revealing that true strength comes from a life anchored in divine truth. When Elijah's time on earth was coming to an end, Elisha asked for a double portion of his spirit, a bold request that went beyond a simple blessing. This request was about carrying on the legacy, embodying the strength, wisdom, and faith Elijah had shown. It symbolized Elisha's desire to serve God with the same zeal and commitment, to continue the fight against idolatry, and to lead Israel spiritually. Imagine the depth of faith it took for Elisha to ask for this. He wasn't looking for power, but for the strength to fulfill a divine mission. The double portion was not a guarantee of an easier path, but a symbol of greater responsibility. Elisha understood that following Elijah's footsteps would require perseverance, courage, and a heart tuned to God's voice. This blessing marked the beginning of Elisha's prophetic journey, carrying forward the spiritual legacy of Elijah and becoming a light for Israel in challenging times. For believers, this moment shows the importance of seeking spiritual depth and the readiness to serve, even when it means shouldering a great task. In asking for Elijah's spirit, Elisha wasn't just seeking strength. He was asking to be part of a divine mission that transcended his own life. This story speaks to all of us who desire to make a meaningful impact, reminding us that true purpose often requires sacrifice. Just as Elisha took up the mantle, every person called by God has a unique role to play in a larger story. This moment of succession is a reminder that, with faith, God's power can flow through each of us, enabling us to carry forward the mission He has placed in our hearts. Elisha's miracles were deeply personal, touching the lives of ordinary people and showing God's care for even the smallest needs. When a widow approached him, burdened by debt and fearing for her children, Elisha multiplied her oil, providing enough to pay off her debts and secure her family's future. This wasn't just a miracle of provision. It was a message that God sees and values every person, that He provides not only for great battles but also for the quiet, everyday struggles of life. Another significant miracle of Elisha involved the Shunammite woman, whose son fell ill and passed away. In a moment of deep compassion, Elisha prayed over the boy, and God restored his life. This miracle demonstrated that God's power could reach into the very heart of human suffering, bringing hope and healing even when all seemed lost. For believers, this story shows that God's miracles aren't distant events, but are woven into the intimate moments of our lives, revealing His love and faithfulness. Through these acts, Elisha didn't just perform miracles. He demonstrated the compassionate nature of God. His ministry reminds us that God is attentive to every detail, from the small daily needs to the profound moments of crisis. Elisha's life challenges believers to approach their faith with the same openness, trusting that God's care is present in both the grand gestures and the simple, practical needs. His miracles remind us that God's love is not limited but extends into every corner of our lives. The showdown on Mount Carmel is one of the most dramatic moments in Elijah's ministry, a test of faith that placed Yahweh against the false gods of Baal. Elijah stood alone, facing 850 prophets of Baal and Asherah, challenging them to call fire down from heaven to prove their God's power. 4 hours, the prophets cried out to Baal, but nothing happened. Then, in a moment of profound faith, Elijah prayed, and God responded with fire from heaven, consuming the altar in a display of divine power that left no doubt about who was the true God. This miracle was more than just a victory over idols. It was a demonstration of God's willingness to reveal himself to his people, even when they had turned away. Elijah's boldness on Mount Carmel reminds believers that faith isn't just a quiet conviction. Sometimes, it requires us to stand publicly and declare our allegiance to God. For Israel, witnessing this event was a wake-up call, a moment when the power of God was made undeniably clear, challenging each person to choose whom they would serve. The Mount Carmel confrontation wasn't just a battle of beliefs. It was a moment that shaped Israel's understanding of loyalty and faith. Elijah's courage to stand alone, backed by God's power, serves as an enduring reminder that God is with those who honor him, no matter the odds. For those facing spiritual challenges today, this story inspires a bold faith that doesn't shy away from opposition. It's a powerful message that with God, even one voice can make an impact against overwhelming odds. The legacy of Elijah and Elisha is deeply rooted in the miracles that revealed God's ongoing power and commitment to his people. Through acts such as healing Naaman, a foreign military leader plagued with leprosy, Elisha demonstrated that God's mercy extended beyond Israel's borders. This healing wasn't just a miracle. It was a lesson on humility and obedience, as Naaman had to follow Elisha's instructions to wash in the Jordan River. For those watching, it was a reminder that God's blessings often come through simple acts of faith. Another of Elisha's impactful miracles was the multiplication of resources, where he took a small amount of food and made it sufficient to feed a crowd. In a time of need, Elisha's actions showed that God is the provider, able to make something out of nothing and to meet the needs of his people. This wasn't just about physical sustenance. It was a powerful message about reliance on God's provision. Believers are reminded through these acts that God's ability to provide transcends any limitations, whether in ancient times or today. These miracles are more than historical events. They carry lessons for every generation. Elijah and Elisha's stories remind us that God's power doesn't fade, and his willingness to work in our lives is as real now as it was then. Their legacy challenges believers to walk in faith, to trust in God's provision, and to recognize that each miracle carries a message. Through faith and obedience, Elijah and Elisha became vessels for God's power, leaving a blueprint for believers to follow as they seek a deeper connection with the divine. Through the lives and miracles of Elijah and Elisha, we see that the mysteries of faith aren't locked in the past. They're alive and waiting for those willing to look deeper. These prophets teach us that faith is more than belief. It's action, courage, and trust in God's power, even when we don't understand it fully. What lessons from their journey can we take into our own lives? Are we willing to trust God in our challenges as they did? If these stories inspire you to go further in your own faith journey, remember to subscribe and turn on notifications to keep uncovering the depths of biblical wisdom with us.